Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about one of the more based Republican politicians in America today, none other than Ted Cruz. He's been a very big Trump supporter and sort of a good figure in our cause lately, and he recently proposed a very interesting bill that I think a lot of people on this website could get behind. It involves stuff we've talked about here before repeatedly, including censorship of media properties that happens a lot when they're transferred to overseas markets. Essentially, this is a conversation we had last fall a lot during the whole South Park season. They talked a lot about this Far East country, the Middle Kingdom, and their bigger growing theatrical market has caused a lot of American movie making companies to recut and reconfigure how they're going to release their films there. Basically, they'll make a film like, say, The Avengers or something popular, trying to go international, like a Terminator action film, or even more of a child film like, say, a Disney animated film. And what happens is these movies come out, but then they have to get recut a little bit in order to release in China. China, of course, has become a big player. They have a billion people there, but they also have a very strict communist government that locks down on a lot of things like internet and film releases and media and pop culture. So if you say the wrong thing in their spaces, they'll lock you down, they'll censor you, they'll remove your project. For example, Ghostbusters 2016 was a movie that couldn't release in China because they're very strict about things having to do with supernatural and ghosts, and other things they don't allow there. For other examples are, say, they don't allow a lot of alphabet people in things. They don't like gay characters, gay kisses on screen. So the American studios will happily kowtow to China and edit those kinds of things out or design their projects in a way to appease China. And this has become very frustrating. South Park called them out last fall, and it turned into a big discussion that actually ended up getting South Park itself, the show, banned from China, and that led to a couple other things, a larger discussion. And now we're in a new world. Now we're in a post-pandemic world, a pandemic that was caused by this same country. So this has caused a lot of people to turn on this Far East nation and say, hey, we should hold them accountable in whatever ways possible. Now, this, albeit, is very different than this whole health scare that they caused. They should and probably could pay for that in the future. But right now, we're talking about movies. We're talking about censoring things for this certain country that has gotten a lot of things backwards, too. We shouldn't be censoring and kowtowing to this kind of place that's basically authoritarian and anti-freedom, the Geneva Conventions, all kinds of bad stuff happens there. So certainly a free and fair country like America shouldn't be down there, shouldn't be taking influence from them. So finally someone stepped up. His name's Ted Cruz. He's proposing a bill to kind of combat this. Here's an article with more details. It's called "Ted Cruz Pushes Bill to Stop Hollywood from Censoring Movies for China." Now, this is an issue, again, like we've talked about before. It came up with South Park. Another incident I can remember that happened recently was Quentin Tarantino refused to cave into China. They asked him to cut a few parts from his latest movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he refused to do that, and that was a big stance. And then now we're having a new step with Ted Cruz proposing this new bill. I'm not sure how this will all work, but I'm definitely interested. So this came out about a week ago. Let's get some more details and see where this goes. Senator Ted Cruz will introduce legislation cutting off Defense Department assistance for U.S. movie studios that permit China to censor their content, he announced. Cruz, Republican Texas, said the bill, called the Stopping Censorship, Restoring Integrity, Protecting Talkies Act, would bar Hollywood studios from doing business with the Pentagon if they accommodate Chinese censors. It is common for major Hollywood films to work with the Pentagon in order to use Defense Department assets such as jets, tanks, or naval bases. Cruz's legislation would prohibit the DoD from providing access to such assets to U.S. studios that censor films for screening in the communist nation. Okay, so this is an interesting take. He's not really coming at them too hard. He's just saying, hey, our government isn't going to support you. We're not going to give you access to these things that aren't necessarily a right for you to use. The government can let them use an airplane or can let them film on a military base if everything's empty and we're in a good situation. They have some extra time. But if not, if they don't want to, they don't have to either. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them kind of withholding their own resources. And I think this is a good sign, and I think it's a good plan so far. I mean, I don't know the other details about it. We'll keep reading on in a second, but I think the point is we shouldn't be helping studios that are working against us, that are supporting another country that's basically our adversary. I know a lot of people will say we're at war with China. I think that's considerable, but it's definitely a sort of Cold War. It's similar to our Cold War with Russia. It's just kind of happening in the background. But make no mistake, there are rivals, and kowtowing to them in these situations with the movies and the censorship, that's just the beginning of a bad road to go down. It can snowball from there and get to a point where our movies are trash and they're more focused on releasing them in China, which is their right. The studios can focus on a market that they want to. But I think Ted Cruz makes a good point too. The American government shouldn't be helping them out, shouldn't be giving them access. We should start a list and possibly start reprimanding these studios in any way we can, in any kind of legal minor way we can. I know this might sound like a bigger step than it really is, but it's just them not being able to film on bases, which is the government's right to take away. For too long, Hollywood has been complicit in China's censorship and propaganda in the name of bigger profits. The Script Act will serve as a wake-up call by forcing Hollywood studios to choose between the assistance they need from the American government and the dollars they want from China, the Texas Republicans said in a statement. The senator's office said he would introduce the bill when the Senate is next in session. Cruz has long been a critic of China, particularly with regard to censoring content. Last year, he slammed Paramount Pictures' decision to censor portions of the film Top Gun: Maverick to appease Chinese propaganda rules, telling the Washington Free Beacon at the time that Hollywood is afraid to stand up for free speech. That's true, and they should. I know they want to make as much money as possible, and it's a business, but at the same time, you guys, once you make so many millions of dollars, you got to pull a Quentin Tarantino and say, hey, enough's enough. Controversy mounted after fans noticed in a trailer for the remake of the classic film, the jacket worn by lead actor Tom Cruise had been altered to remove two patches showing the Japanese and Taiwanese flags. The patches appeared to have been altered in an effort to adhere to the Chinese Communist Party's strict censorship guidelines and access the country's lucrative market. Top Gun is an American classic, and it's incredibly disappointing to see Hollywood elites appease the Chinese Communist Party. The party uses China's economy to silence dissent against its brutal repression and to erode the sovereignty of American allies like Taiwan. Hollywood is afraid to stand up for free speech in enabling the party's campaign against Taiwan, he said at the time. Okay, so now it's even more political because we're entering the whole China versus Taiwan debate. For those who don't know, at one point, the kind of democratic, independent, I want to say freedom-loving Chinese people, they were forced to move over to Taiwan. And for a long time in the past, Taiwan was kind of considered like the Republic of China, and it even had a seat on the UN and was recognized internationally for many years. A lot has changed with that in recent times, but there's basically a very big tension between China and Taiwan. And Taiwan is kind of like the new China from back in the day, but over the years now it's just its own place. It's a small island off the coast of China. And anyone that kind of takes a side in that issue is going to get problems with China. And that's why this Top Gun movie had to kind of alter a jacket. Not the biggest deal in the world. I mean, this is a very small detail, but it just goes to show how every single step and every single thing is considered. And the last people we should be listening to is these communists in the Far East. I mean, they're very, very brutal. They've repressed their people. They've forced out a whole group into an island outside of them, and now they're kind of still trying to argue with them. They've had similar issues with Hong Kong, which is an area that's under the rule of China, but kind of at one point had its own independence, like it was like a one town, two state kind of situation. But recently the protests there have failed and China has locked down on that area too. And it's just a very sad sign, because these are places we should be supporting. Hong Kong, we should be supporting Taiwan. These are like American allies who support us and our freedom. But at the same time, is this movie stuff worth starting a big battle with China over? Of course not. We're not trying to get into World War III here either, but it is interesting, and I like that Ted Cruz is keeping an eye on things and proposing this new act to kind of at least give a little bit of pushback to the Hollywood studios. I think this is the first step, and I think it could turn into something more. Like, for example, eventually they could take away tax breaks from them, further punishments, maybe even fines. I don't know if we need to go that far, but I could see that kind of building up and escalating, and I could definitely see it being interesting and a possible solution, because we need to fight for America. We need to fight for freedom. We need to stop China's oppressive rule. We need to get them into the modern era. I mean, I'm glad that they're a big economy and they have a lot of people, and we're not necessarily 100% against them. We're not against all Chinese people, but the government is bad, and them trying to censor everything and having Hollywood appease to that, it's just a very sad thing to see, because this is America. We created Hollywood. We created the movie business. We created all this stuff. And to now see things change so drastically in not so much of a time. I mean, movies have been around for about 100 years now, not much more than that. And the film industry is certainly younger, but it is very big. It is very powerful. There's a lot of money going on. So it's interesting to see how it's changing now and kind of moving towards the China markets. International markets are getting highlighted over the American markets, which is where all this stuff started. It's a bad sign and it's negative, but at least someone cares enough to try and change things. That about wraps things up on today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. What do you think about this bill? What do you think about that Far East nation and people censoring stuff, and Ted Cruz proposing a sort of quasi-solution? Hopefully you guys think a lot, because I want to see your comments below. And also hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell for notifications. And until next time, you guys have a great day.